moving on from the Angela Rayner misogyny article posted in the Mail on Sunday, I did mention in that little segment about how there was there's been this over the last kind of month or so. There's been this continued attacks on Labour for being ostensibly trans inclusive, or trying them to admit to either being trans inclusive or not. The media have been asking them what is a woman to try and get them to adhere to some kind of position in the debate, so that they can then skewer the Labour Party from whichever end they want to skewer them from. Obviously, they want to try and admit them to be trans inclusive, so that they can skewer them from the right and try and drum up moral panic fear to try and move voters away from Labour. That's clearly a thing that's been happening within the press, and so this whole Angela Rayner misogyny thing has happened at a pretty inopportune moment for the rightoid press, when they've been trying to paint Labour Party as the party that hates women because they're at least ostensibly trans-inclusive, if you exclude like Rosie Duffield and all the Labour members who went to the Council of Europe to try and remove all the references to how transphobic the UK is. But I digress. Now, no one is more of a trans-antagonistic person in the UK media than one Mr. Darren Grimes, the crafty wank himself, the Crimey, as he was known to his friends. Now, I tweeted out earlier today talking about how... So, let me bring up the actual thread so that it makes a little bit more sense to everyone. Let me bring this shit up. Now, this is what I said. So it's very telling that Darren Grimes has in his very small list of followers, includes a slew of nobody gender critical. So people like Rosa Dawn, people like Debbie Hayton, people who are completely unknown unless you're fully engaged on like the trans quote unquote debate, right? These are people that you'd only know if you were fully properly engaged in the whole gender critical, echo chamber paradigm thing. Right? Unless you're properly immersed in this discussion, you'd have no idea who these people are. But he follows a bunch of these people, right? He follows a bunch of these people who are at the forefront of the anti-trans discussion. Now, because obviously his entire career has been him pandering to whatever viewpoints he thinks will gain him media notoriety, because he has always been. I think it was kind of came of a meme on Twitter. He was spending all of his time trying to become a panelist on GB News, which obviously succeeded. When the network was first announced, he was desperate. He was so fucking desperate to be able to get a position as being some kind of anchor, some kind of face on the GB News channel. So he's finally got his wish. He's finally been incorporated into their brand by essentially just repeating all of the same talking points ad infinitum, right? He's the epitome of someone obsessed with being famous for being truthful, and it should be very clear that he's using his anti-trans moral panic for personal gain, just like with every other cultural talking point like Net Zero. So that's why he is following people like Debbie Hayton, people like Rosa Dawn, people like all of these, gender criticals, right? All these gender critical people. He's following them, so he has all the tabs on where the discourse is going to go when it becomes mainstream. So he has all the talking points memorized, because he knows that to be able to generate not only outrage clicks, but also to generate, attention, because I keep going, we live in the attention economy. Whatever gets you the most traction, engages best with algorithms, or gives you the most engagement in general, is what you really want to be doing. So if you want to be able to generate some kind of platform, generate some kind of profile with which that you can use to grow your brand value online, right? And antagonistic stuff, especially in a very polarized debate like what's happening around with transgender people at the moment, is a very easy thing to be able to get into, to be able to generate clicks. And clearly, lots of members of the rightoid press are engaging in it, as I mentioned before, with the whole questioning the what is the woman question for members of the Labour Party, or etc., right? That's been a thing they've been trying to mainstream for a very long time, because it generates clicks, it generates outrage. So what Darren's been doing here is trying to engage in where the debate comes from by following these people. Then he can use those talking points to ingratiate himself further with the right-wing commentator, echo chamber, media space, whatever, what have you. He's very obviously keeping close eye on the discourse. We can feast on it for clout, and GCs are just so intellectually vapid they can't see how the rightoid media is using them. Now, I tweeted this out at 6 a.m. this morning because I was awake then, apparently. Obviously, this Angela Rayner thing has become big news all over Twitter, and like fucking clockwork, I called it I called it first up, right? The very next tweet I see from him today is him saying, "It's interesting how politicians who 2 minutes ago couldn't bring themselves to find what woman is are this morning waxing lyrical about misogyny in British politics." Because for some reason you can't be supportive of transgender people without um and also hate misogyny at the same time. Because he knows, right? He's seen all the discourse. He's seen all the discourse that's been going on online, right? And he's seen the way in which the narrative is trying to be pushed by the people who pay his fucking bills about how if you don't, is that they're trying to paint anyone who supports trans rights as a misogynist. Like people like Maya Forstater, people like Debbie Hayton, people like Rose Dawn, people like Kathleen Stark, and all of these people, Jane Clare Jones, these people have all been using their platforms to try and create this false dichotomy. And the right-wing media have lapped it up, hence why the Daily Mail have, we're feel happy platforming Maya Forstater's new suffragette campaign to respect my sex. And I essentially they won't vote for anybody who is supportive of the right of trans people to be able to self-identify, to be able to have a gender recognition certificate. Because remember, these people want to repeal the GRA, right? They want to be able to remove trans people from public life. Like these, just like I hate to be like hyperbolic, but they're tantamount to like genocide apologists, really, with the way in which they want to erase trans existence from public life. But anyway, I digress. Because they've got a platform such as we won't vote for Labour unless they explicitly start hating trans people, the right-wing media know exactly what they can do, right? The right-wing media knows if they latch onto it, create this divide, they can move people away from politicians who do not have their economic interests at heart. So it works twofold in being able to generate outrage clicks to be able to increase their brand value overall, to be able to get people engaged with a moral panic issue. It's why papers kept pushing the anti-Muslim stuff in the 2000s, kept pushing like the anti-raver stuff in the 90s, where they kept pushing the anti-gay stuff, all the Section 28 stuff. It's all exactly the same. The reason why papers pushed this was to A, generate a narrative, and B, generate attention to be able to increase their bottom line, right? That's what they've all been doing. That's the two main reasons why they've been doing it. And obviously Darren is really good at grifting these people to continue on with that narrative. So it's very, very clear what they're doing exactly. They've lost the war about gay people. They're just moving on to the next acceptable target. And so these like gender crits who claim to care about women specifically are being used as a kind of a paper tiger by the right-wing press for a more sinister campaign. A, to make a bunch of money, and B, to also be able to demonize a political party that ostensibly shouldn't have their economic interests at heart. Obviously, with Keir Starmer in charge, there is really no threat to the power of these media institutions. I don't know why they feel like they need to attack him, but anything to the left of fucking Pinochet is too impactful on their bottom line at this point. So they'll attack Starmer and Labour regardless. But he really is no threat, but they're treating him like they are. But if they see an open goal like this, which the gender criticals have given them, why wouldn't they take it? Guarantee when they lose this, the next generation of Conservatives will act like this never happened, like they did with gay people. Yeah, almost certainly true. The thing is with Darren Grimes as well. So there was a good private article about this last year. It didn't gain as much traction as I thought. I didn't see it until I tried to do some research, right? So Darren Grimes has this YouTube channel called Reasoned, right? I've gone over a couple of their videos before because, he's a fucking clown. So I wanted to destroy him theoretically in the marketplace of ideas in Minecraft or whatever. And I went on their website, right? If you go to their website, if it will load. Right? First of all, it's a quite amusing they call don't think, don't follow, whilst also trying to push a specific narrative and trying to, make people who are watching their videos engage with their specific point of view, which is, that's just propaganda, right? You're part of the propaganda. You're part of the Chomsky propaganda model. So, if anything, you're asking people just to follow you instead. That's what media is there to do. It's there to be able to create narrative and to be able to try and, especially from a political angle, move people over to your point of view using whatever framework that you try and use to tell the story, right? So, I don't think he quite understands with his own slogan what he is trying to. He's trying to be able to change people's minds with the things he's doing, which is making them follow him. But I digress. Regardless, if you look at their about section, right? Our mission to challenge the pervasive left-wing bias in online content. Lol. The incredibly the incredibly left-wing Daily Mail, whatever, like the most viewed newspaper website in the country. Much of it originates from the UK's mainstream media and activist group. Well, the mainstream media is entirely fucking right-wing, because they are, funnily enough, all it being controlled and funded by incredibly, wealthy people. Like, especially if you talk about newspapers as a vessel for news, which is what most people talk about when they talk about mainstream media, is the news media, right? That's mainly what people are talking about. Like, the Mail is owned by Viscount Rothermere, Telegraph is owned by the Barclay brothers, Sun and the Times are owned by Rupert Murdoch, right? These are all incredibly rich people who have plenty to lose if economic policy goes more left wing, right? So to claim that the UK's mainstream media is where the left wing bias come from online is just absolute complete fucking nonsense. But whatever. They always like to play the underdog that doesn't really exist. A lot of conservatives, right? So today on Media Today, we'll see you cancelled online for daring to argue in favour of common sense views. Well, again, just being cancelled isn't the same as people disagreeing with you. Like, it's just, if lots of people disagree with you, apparently it means being cancelled. A study released showed that that Twitter is left leaning. Yeah, because it's an online platform and more young people are going to be involved. So whatever. So where did it say what I found out before? Many people, particularly young people, don't have a view of the merits of conservative values simply because they've been exposed to them. Well, we have been exposed to them by our fucking boomer parents. Advocates of those values need to make a case for them. It is on us to ensure the next generation is introduced to market-based solutions to the environment, housing, and cost of living crisis. Now, where was it? Was it in the privacy policy? I think it might have been the privacy policy. What's interesting, we'll keep market-based solutions in mind, shall we? Shall we put a pin in that for later on? Right. Our content includes short films, animated monologues with special guests, and longer form interviews with people across the political spectrum. We'll also put a pin in that for later as well, right? Who we are. Reasoned is an online grassroots organisation and video channel. We're based online, etc. So I saw this page, right? So when I was researching this, I saw this page that said their full details are media and activism, 5 Elstree Gate, Elstree Boreham Wood, Hertfordshire, right? So I did some digging and found out this media company that is registered at this address, this had already been investigated by a private eye, and they've shown that this company that funds Reasons UK, based at this address, is owned by. It's basically just a shell company, or that is where the managing director is the son of an MEP who tried to monopolise salmon, like a multi-billion-pound salmon business in the UK. It was an MEP called Lance Annisdale, and the shell company's name is his son, Oliver Annisdale. So this is not a grassroots corporate company. This isn't grassroots in any sense of the word. It's already being funded by money of wealthy people, right? It's already got plenty of seed money from people who are not in any sense grassroots. So that's just a complete fucking lie, right? So remember what I was saying before about the people who fund these kind of channels wanting to purport narratives that are going to be beneficial to them moving forward as the people with the money to invest in media companies, whether it be, large companies like the mainstream media institutions or smaller ones like these kind of activist projects like Reasons UK, which aren't grassroots, but are instead just funded by oligarchs. Obviously, I understand that a multi-billion-pound business in London isn't oligarchic in the sense that Viscount Rothermere is, but there's still the bourgeoisie at the end of the day, right? Like potato. It's clear that people who would be worried about any kind of left-wing economic policy because it damages their own bottom line, not because it's bad for society in general, or whatever, will then try and create narratives using that content to be able to demonise left-wing narratives. It's very, very clear. So You look back at their about section and realize, oh well, we want to think there needs to be market-based solutions to these kind of things, right? I wonder why the incredibly rich shell company that is owned by that is just being moved into the name of Oliver Anisdale, moved into the name of some son of some rich person, some fucking trust fund kid, right? Why? I wonder why they would want to promote market-based solutions to the environment. I wonder that. It made me thinking about the whole rightoid atmosphere, the kind of the right-wing online content creation engine, because we all know places like big institutions like the Daily Wire and PragerU are funded by the Koch brothers, the Wilkes brothers. This is funded by the Anisdales, right? There's clearly, you can see where the dark money comes from that funds all of these projects, right? And they're incredibly good at taking people like Darren Grimes and then trying to build them up to be able to be a part of the online presence. So remember how, I don't know if anyone else watched it, but there was a video where some black guy was protesting teachers teaching critical race theory, filmed on a camera phone, and then he got paraded all over Fox News, all over Newsmax, all over OAN, right? They parade him around there saying this activist person was this viral video about him getting angry about critical race theory being taught in schools. Turns out he was already an activist. He was already a person with a YouTube channel, already a media personality, and they knew that they could use him to be able to expand his narrative further by bringing him into the kind of media apparatus. He now has a very large YouTube channel where he talks about politics in general. So they will take these people and they will put money into them. They'll funnel the dark money into them to be able to monopolize the discourse. Now, we don't do this on the left because obviously the vast majority of us, especially like left people, actual left-wing people, not just stock Dems or third wayers or liberals or whatever. The reason we don't, like, 'cause obviously liberals have money that finance them as well. Like, you look at, like, I have some political disagreements, obviously, with Supertansky. Like, she's a liberal, and we massively disagree on a huge number of economic issues, but at least we agree on some other issues or whatever. But because she's a liberal and not a socialist, right? People like Byline Times will happily platform her, right? Byline Times, who already have investment money, will then pass that down to bring Supertansky into their network of people who create content for them. So both liberal and right-wing news outlets and media outlets will have money behind them that they put into to be able to create new figures to try and monopolize the discourse. But on the left, we're all grassroots organizations, right? It's all Novara Media, it's all streamers, it's all Owen Jones is like the anomaly because he went to Oxford, so that qualifies for him for being part of the mainstream media class in the UK. Like, he's the only real, proper, like, actual socialist writer in any of these newspapers, right? And even then, like, The Guardian fucking hate him. You see what they tried to do to him when they had that spat with Suzanne Moore, but I digress, right? Most of the stuff that he proposes is social democratic, even at that point, despite them self-describing as a socialist. But then again, I would also self-describe as a socialist. Yeah, I also believe in the efficacy of social democratic policy in the meantime. But again, I digress. You look at these people, like even the biggest left-wing, like the biggest like actual like left-wing news outlet in the UK is Novara. At the end of the day, right? Aaron Bastani, Michael Walker, and Ash Sarkar. These three people, and Novara's funding is the vast majority of it is just funding that's come from donations. Like, I think there's like a socialist think tank, like a European socialist think tank, who gives them some money. I think so, which again is just mostly full up of people coming with their own donations as well. I think it mostly come from union donations as well. So it's all just grassroots funding at the end of the day when you go down those lines, right? But because of that, because they realise that there's like a market share that they need to collate for themselves, they don't do the same thing. They don't try and amplify other voices because that eats into their market share. It seems like an elite club. Now I fucking hate that shit. I'm bitter because I want to have my own platform, but obviously I'm not smart enough or well informed enough to do that. I just spout shit on my Twitch channel, which is fine, whatever, I guess. But I would like to see the left try and monopolize the discourse a little bit more by trying to take control of it and platform each other, which apparently on YouTube, on all of the YouTube channels, we're happy to do, unless you're Vorsh, apparently. They're all happy to be able to give these people additional platforms moving forward. But I noticed this. The reason why I noticed this, so me might have remembered a video that I did quite a while back, covering a YouTuber called Gilly Politics. Now she's a TikToker. I think she's got like tens of thousands of followers. She might have hundreds of thousands now. I'm not sure, but she's like fucking ANCAP, like proper like meme ideology, like smooth brain, fridge temperature IQ shit. Right? She's really fucking bottom of the barrel. Mises Caucus, libertarian free marketoid. I had a video about how capitalism wasn't racist, and also she just couldn't understand the idea that capitalism and the state are intimately tied to each other because she's a Rothbardist and they think you can just get rid of the state, have everything done by mutually agreed private contracts, which is obviously a fucking dog eat dog world of capitalist profit seeking and profit generation, which explicitly breeds, especially from like a Rothbardian or a Randian point of view, like an objectivist point of view, where that's all about personal self-interest. There's no reason with which you'd want to engage in these mutual contracts because you want to be able to manufacture this to be as however's going to best benefit you. But I digress. Either way, she's just a random TikToker. She had like an 800 subscriber YouTube channel. Like she's deleted a lot of her old videos now that she's got some fucking seed money now. You can see that the production values have gone up based on what we covered her before, because she used to be just her making videos in a room or whatever. Like I first noticed, like weird, how she managed to get an interview with Calvin Robbins, who's a pretty, well-known rightoid academic who gets a lot of screen time in like the rightoid media. How tiny YouTube channel managed to get him on for an interview, quite a long interview as well. Now, because I shit you not, guess who the new partner for Reasoned UK is, which, mind you, is funded already by dark money, right? Oh, would you look at that? It's Jessica Gill. Look at she's being included in Reasoned UK nowadays, because what they've done is they found someone who had a platform and then paid her some money so that she can increase her video production, because they know they can control the discourse if they promote this people with more voices, right? It's such an incredibly simple and effective and frustrating media tactic that they use to try and propagate their own little viewpoints, right? So, it's not really grassroots anymore, but I digress. Either way, she's got some garbage, like the truth on trickle-down economics with fucking Thomas Sowell, although don't know why she's included Joe Biden here when, we're from the UK, but I digress. And clearly she understands, just like Darren does, about the ways in which that they can drive narratives online. Because she's been doing videos. She had one video about like, it's gone now, but she did have one video about how there's this war between feminists and trans people, and how new feminists are the real misogynists. And that clearly got some traction because it's clearly a big talking point nowadays. And all she does now, she doesn't talk about economics on her platform, on Reason at the very least. She's just like, here's a video about Leah Thomas, here's a video about virtue signaling, here's a video about Women's Day letting women down, here's feminism clashing with trans ideology. Here's another video about LGBTQ protesters. Here's another one about people being taught things in school, like libs of TikTok shit. Here's another one about trans people in bathrooms, right? She's seen there's a niche and an ISP to just keep going on and on about this shit. And they've just gone, oh, you're fulfilling our narratives for you. Well, here's some money. Join our little media campaign to try and get this changed, right? It's so incredibly obvious to anyone with a functioning brain, right, that this is what's happened. And we don't do it on the left. We don't do it. So let's have a look at this latest one. This is a libs of, this is just like her trying to be libs of TikTok.
All left-wing teachers.
Although, obviously, the first sentence that she said here is "our left-wing teachers," when it doesn't really make sense for them to do this other than just for outrage bait. This is clearly just outrage bait rather than some kind of political point scoring, because the reason why the libs of TikTok thing is being pushed so hard, why Christopher Rufo has been kind of the architect of a lot of these online kind of media narratives that are being spun by the right in America, is because changing the way in which you engage in school choice and the level of homeschooling is a big thing in the United States, because they have much more kind of conservative, they're more culturally conservative, want to be able to indoctrinate their children by be able to curate what schools do and don't teach, which is kind of less of a thing in the UK. Whereas merely it's just kind of culture war babble. getting people angry for clicks at this point, rather than any kind of specific political policy that they're trying to change. Although there is still the same stuff about demonizing Labour for being misogynistic, for liking trans people, whatever, I digress. But so it doesn't really make as much sense, but clearly they've seen that this model of antagonism works for the right in America, like with libs of TikTok. So clearly they're trying to replicate this now. Also, can I also say, what is it with Zoomers and holding microphones in their video? Just get one that goes on your desk. It looks silly that you're holding a microphone.
Are left-wing teachers teaching kids inappropriate and even sexualized material in order to promote gender ideology? Well, let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Ah, yes, gender ideology. That buzzword that literally no one ever really searched for. Same with sex-based rights, all that kind of stuff. It's not ever really been a concept that anyone's ever really wanted to discuss until gender crits realised that they could create their own little lingo with which to rile people up to generate their online moral panic as well, but which clearly the right have latched onto, which again shows why Darren Grimes follows all those TERF accounts, because he wants to be able to in the lingo to be able to bring people over from that fringe discussion to the mainstream to affect wider political discourse.
So in backlash to the Don't Say Gay bill, aka the anti-groomer bill, left-wing ideologues who...
Oh shit, they're just parroting the same like groomer stuff. Okay, well, he can just, I mean, this is fucking, she's fucking scum, is she? Fucking rat. What fucking little rat Gilly is? What little fucking rat Jessica Gill is. Trying to paint people who are trying to make people more educated. Paint them as fucking paedophiles. What fucking rat.
promote trans ideology and gender ideology have been saying that no teacher is promoting sexual and
Who edited? You got loads of money. Hire a prop editor.
even gender ideological content to kids. But thankfully, the libs of TikTok Twitter account
How has she managed to get a platform both on here and on TikTok whilst being a fucking charisma vacuum?
has done great work in exposing what these teachers are promoting to young kids. And the fact that they're so unapologetic about promoting this stuff just shows how far they've gone down the left-wing
Look at the camera when you're talking to me.
echo chamber, that they think this stuff is normalised when it really shouldn't be. So I thought it would be fun to react to some.
The most controversial way I teach my kids consent is that they
And I know what they've seen, because there's the Ben Shapiro reacts to liberal TikToks has been the only videos on the Daily Wire that's generated them clicks. They just see the formula and then just go Control Delete, Control C, Control V, copied the whole thing. So if we do the same thing, maybe we'll generate some more clicks as well, which is kind of funny.
all choose their own gender identity because it's every person's right to be who they are. It's that simple.
Teaching kids about gender identity is just going to confuse them. There are people in society...
No, I mean, it just doesn't. And when you actually look at, you just say, some people were born a certain way, but they identify another way. And kids are like, okay, I believe that. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to go lick that tree now. What kids are like.
who experience gender dysphoria and do wish to seek out surgery as a way of helping that. However, we shouldn't be promoting this lifestyle to kids in the same way that...
Well, it's interesting that you see that when you know that the UK is a bit more progressive, you have to change the way that you frame it, right? Obviously, they're using the turf island buzzwords like gender ideology or whatever to be able to influence the market in that way. And she has at least understood the idea that gender dysphoria is a thing that exists. But yeah, like you can see how they've just taken other formula and then used that to try and market it to the UK discourse machine.
that cosmetic surgery, like nose jobs, shouldn't be promoted to kids. And also, children cannot consent, they're not mature.
Yeah, but nose jobs. Let me just get back the start of what you're about to say there. But nose jobs are cosmetic surgery that is done as an elective procedure just because you want it, right? Whereas the surgery that you engage in, obviously kids don't get the surgery. Like you have to be 16 to get surgery in the UK if you're transgender, right? You just get put on a puberty blockers, which is different because they're reversible. Like, this isn't an elective cosmetic procedure. This is the internationally renowned by, literally every fucking, 99% of the the medical organizations that deal with this shit under the sun. They all will tell you that this is the treatment for gender dysphoria, right? This is how things work. So if you have gender dysphoria and you get diagnosed with gender dysphoria, they will then, if after you've gone through all of the the counselling that you need to understand whether it's going to be right for you, after you've jumped through all of those hoops, you will eventually get that as a treatment. That's not the same as a nose job.
Not consent, they're not mature enough to make informed consent. By promoting the idea...
Okay, right. Gonna have to have another understanding of turf law here. Let me go full screen for this one. Ooh, that's close up. So, the idea that the children can't consent to these things, right? So, there is a thing called Gillick competence, which is the understanding that there are some things that you have to understand that kids need to be able to give their own actual consent to, as long as it's being understood by, some kind of level of professionalism that it's reasonable for them to want to be able to understand that consent, right? And so there's a competence level with which that they can give consent to certain things. So, for example, abortion is a medical procedure. If you're under the age of 16, right, and you get pregnant for some reason, if Gillick competence was not a thing, where they could be judged competent enough to be able to elect to undergo having an abortion and consent to it despite being under the age with which they usually would be able to, Gillick competence mean that they can engage with it, right? So if, heaven forfend, right, fucking hell, a child under the age of 16 got pregnant and their parents didn't want them to get an abortion because they were fucking religious nut jobs or whatever. Because of Gillick competence, they can go out and get an abortion, but because that can also be used to possibly allow these kids to be able to consent to engaging in some kind of level of treatment for their gender dysphoria, which is also a medical procedure, just like having an abortion would be, right? If they have the diagnosis, I would say it's a necessary medical procedure they have to go through, but they have parents who don't want them to do so because, I don't know, say for example, I know they're religious zealots, or religious ideologues, religious nutjobs, right? If they're young enough, Gillick competence says they can also consent to that medical procedure to be able to deal with that issue, just in the same way they can do with abortion. So what's going to happen is that all of these TERFs who want to remove Gillick competence because they want to hurt trans kids, right, will by proxy then also hurt, young girls who end up needing to get an abortion, right? Like, come on, it's so she just doesn't know what she's talking about, right? It just shows how little research rightoids do into their shit.
The idea that they can consent leads to the idea that kids can consent to sex reassignment surgery, which they can't. As a child, you cannot properly consent and understand the effects of sex reassignment surgery, or even things like going on hormone.
This is just slippery slope fallacy by saying, well, if we give them consent to go on hormone blockers, or we consent to social transitioning, this could theoretically mean that might end up going in sexual reassignment surgery, which has never ever happened to anyone over 16 in the UK, right? No one in the UK under 16 has ever had sexual reassignment surgery. Ever, 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 ever. That's not a thing that happens. They might have gone through cross-sex. I think there's some people who were, in very special cases, getting cross-sex hormones under the age of 16. I think that's only incredibly rare. Other than that, it's just hormone blockers until the age of 16, right? The NHS guidelines will state that you cannot give people cross-sex hormones unless in incredibly special circumstances, unless they're 16 or over.
Blockers, because they can lead to risk of other illnesses and even lead to things like infertility. When you're a kid or even a young teenager, you cannot
citation needed.
Properly understand the effects these treatments would cause. Most kids can't decide what outfit they're going to wear the next day, never mind if they want kids in the future. And I don't get how this has anything to do with consent. It's just a way to throw nice words out there. And it just seems like another way of isolating.
You just talked for 5 minutes. It's 2 minutes about what you think children should and should be able to consent to, and then this actually isn't anything about consent. Which fucking is it?
Parents away from kids.
My name's Az and I'm a preschool teacher. So my classroom celebrates diversity. It's probably my
Learnerbox was talking about this person. They're pretty cool.
favorite thing to teach. We usually use kids' books to talk about this kind of thing. Recently we started wearing pronoun pins, and the kids get to pick a new pronoun pin every day. We had some that pick like she, her every single day, and we had some that changed up. So diversity is really important in my class. So I recently realized that there's a whole lot of really amazing figureheads and people to look up to in this world who aren't white or straight or male or what have you, and that we should learn a little bit more about these people.
Again, the insistent focus on gender identity.
That's such a weird jump cut there. Again, please hire a prop editor.
Isn't healthy. I thought the early feminist belief was that your gender doesn't define you. Apparently nowadays it's your gender that's the only thing that defines you.
Nowhere in that video has anybody said that it's your gender entirely defines you, right? I mean, I don't think she understands anything about actual feminist theory, but whatever. Nothing in that video said that you're entirely defined by your gender. It's people can choose it. The whole thing about I think especially things like gender fluidity or whatever, these variety of non-binary identities, is that it means that it becomes a little bit more frivolous, which I think is further on to where it needs to be with regards to how we look at the gender paradigm. So that's nowhere in that video has it purported to say that someone's gender identity is the most important thing about them. It's like people talking about anti-racist saying that race is the only thing that matters. Well, no one's really saying that.
Pronoun pins to kids, while it sounds harmless, it just later confuses them.
I wonder why it might sound harmless. Maybe because it is completely harmless.
Gender shouldn't be something you can pick and choose because this has real-world implications. Look at women's only spaces. Look at women's sports. That's the effects of diluting the definition of gender. And being a woman...
Okay, look at those spaces. Again, you can see this with rightoids all the time. They will just make a statement and completely not qualify it. They will say, look at this thing, and they'll appeal to whatever individual preconceived biases that people in their audience have to fill in the gaps and say, well, look what happens if we ignore gender. Look what happens to women's sports. Look what happens to women's only spaces. No, what does happen? Please elucidate further, Gilly. Please elucidate further onto about which particular thing is going to happen, because I don't know if you've seen any of the evidence, but what actually happens is to women's spaces, if you allow trans women in, is nothing happens. All the evidence, even if you look at countries with self-ID, where apparently that's been told to us that it will have a whole raft of men pretending to identify as women so they can go into women's spaces to be able to engage in sexual assault and completely exploit self-ID to be able to do that. Like surreptitiously or whatever. And I'm like, that's just not happened. There's no evidence to show that. Like the trans sports things, that is far more complex, right? And I think it depends on which sport, which discipline, when people start their transition, right? But that's a whole complicated discussion, even within like the world of like the Olympics and athletics, where the IOC have certain guidelines about what trans women have to do to be able to compete. But all of that nuance is lost because she's just gone, oh well, this is going to have an effect on trans women in sports, whatever next. And then the audience have to then fill that in and go, oh well, that must mean that it's bad because I've done no research, but I reckon that trans women in sports is bad. I reckon that trans women in single-sex spaces is bad. When you've not actually elucidated further. You just assumed your audience is going to agree with you and then moved on from there.
It shouldn't be anything more than being an adult human female. And also we shouldn't be promoting and celebrating people.
The editor just cut off the end of female. Jesus Christ. She must edit them themselves because she's a worse editor than I am, and I'm a really fucking bad editor because I edit all my shit myself when I do editing, which I don't usually do because I don't have backers from multi-million-pound businesses paying me money to say things that I say. I'm relying on generous donations from people in my Twitch audience. Hint, hint. No, it's fine, you don't have to, but it would be nice if you did.
Because of their identity. We should be promoting and celebrating people because of their achievements. It's crazy how these things are being so naturally promoted in education.
No one's being promoted and celebrated because of their identity. Like, the achievement of having an identity and overcoming adversity, that might be a thing one might celebrate, but you're acting like people are given like, prizes for achieving transness or achieving gayness, which isn't happening. No one's celebrating things that just for the sake of celebrating them, right? It doesn't make it just completely makes no sense, this video.
Education, even within the UK. I remember in a PSHE lesson, the first thing the teacher said was Happy World Pronouns Day. And the thing is, these people don't understand the implications of it. They just think it's harmless, when in reality it does have societal impacts.
Tell me what the impacts are. Don't just assume that the impacts exist. I mean, there aren't any impacts because, I've actually bothered doing the research because I have to do the research because I have to justify my own existence as a trans person.
But that being confusing kids, encouraging them to go down unnecessary surgery, or just threatening women's only spaces.
And see why it's all just like slippery slope fallacy scaremongering and fearmongering, right? There's no evidence, there's no empiricism, there's no quantification in any of this video. It's just this might lead to X, that's bad, be scared, we must stop the scary teachers teaching their things because that might mean that children have their genitals reassigned, right? That's it. There's no evidence, no nothing. It's all just fear-mongering and speculation, and there's no citations anywhere in this fucking video.
I think it's so important that we have legislation to make sure there's safeguards in the UK. This next video isn't necessarily to do with classroom teaching, it's just an interesting video on how
But there's already safeguards in the UK. We already have safeguarding systems. Now, those safeguarding systems do need work because sometimes people do slip through the cracks, like Karen White, which every turf in their fucking world seems to bring up as, like, the evidence that disproves the rule, rather than an anecdote when you need to look at actual statistics and data to be able to have a proper overall understanding of the entirety of the issue, rather than taking one anecdote out of context and using that to be able to control the narrative. But either way, I digress. There are already safeguarding systems in place. They just need to be implemented properly and updated over time, right? But the safeguarding thing doesn't need to be and shouldn't be exclude trans women from women's spaces, because all that does is harm trans women, right?
These people think.
We want people to put in the emotional effort to see us as we actually are. Because what you've described is a situation where somebody is memorizing pronouns rather than actually trying to see the person in a new light with the new information. I don't want you to see me as a woman and then remember to use he, him pronouns. I want you to see me as a dude, you know? And when it's a situation like I described in this last video, I see it as you seeing them as a cis person and just taking the any pronouns as a cop-out to any of the emotional work. The point is empathy and human.
I think this video just perfectly exemplifies.
I love how just like taking away the qualifying statement at the end there to leave just the first bit there, but I'm sure it won't really change what Gilly would try to say here.
How gender ideology cannot work practically in the real world. The human brain can just naturally pick up whether someone is male or female subconsciously. We do it without even knowing. And 99% of the time, it's spot on, even if you do describe yourself as non-binary or whatever. And the thing is, when you have no concrete definition of what that gender is,
that has always been gender identity, right? That's always been gender, the way in which your brain tries to be able to assign some kind of societal category to people. That's literally how gender works. Like, again, I have said on this channel before that I subscribe to a Butlerian view of gender, where it is a performative notion that people make snap judgments on, and how people react to presentation or way that you act or the way that you speak, all these kind of things. There's this whole level of cluster properties that are part of gender as a concept, right? Obviously, you know, as a post-structuralist, Judith Butler said these cluster properties will give us a rough idea of how gender works. And you say, well, people make a snap decision to understand what gender of somebody, what sex they think that somebody might be. That's all you're doing there is describing gender. Now, those paradigms might change, and what I think I don't necessarily agree with some parts of that TikTok, but what my point of view would be was that what a lot of, you know, non-binary people and people outside like the gender binary who aren't explicitly conforming to be a trans woman or a trans man and then conforming to the cultural assigned things, which would be us be able to present that gender to people in a way that we get gendered correctly automatically, right? Non-binary people will try and change the paradigm from base principles so that people will see them in a different light overall. Now, I think that telling people to do the emotional work, that's not going to get people involved, really. But it's like, I would prefer it if you know, when you think of me in this way. But saying you need to do emotional work, it kind of puts the onus on other people to, you know, it doesn't get people engaged with what you have to say. So I think that's how it could probably change the TikTok as it was done there.
So a woman is, for example, how are you meant to look at someone or see someone and know they're that gender? So yes, you'd have to create a list in your head and remember it. And the sad thing is that these views are accepted by a big portion of society now because they don't realise the actual implications of it. They just think it's about empathy.
Implication. You've not provided the implication. You've not talked about any implication here. You've just assumed there is one, assumed your audience thinks one, that there is an implication, and then just breezed past it.
And respect. You can have empathy and respect to people who are struggling with gender dysphoria, or people who get bullied and hurt because they don't conform to gender stereotypes.
The edit cut off the end of dysphoria there.
But that doesn't mean you have to uncritically accept this gender ideology. Thank you for watching. I'm Jess Gill. This is Reasoned. Goodbye.
Well, that was a shit video, Jess. Please create better content. But did you see, like, even like fucking genuinely stupid people, like genuinely idiotic people, like this, like Sophie Corcoran, like Darren Grimes, or whatever, because they are happy to parrot right-wing talking points, because they're happy to just continue, you know, repeating ad infinitum what is going to be helpful for the interests of the people who pay their bills. People will just get money thrown at them to be able to continue creating content, right? Fucking hell, it's crazy to me. Like she does not. That was not a good video, not stylistically, and not, you know, with the content, and not her as a person. Right? She's not charismatic. Like I don't think she's really good at talking to people. It's crazy to me that she's managed to get such a big following on TikTok just by not being really good at putting her points across to people. She didn't even look at the fucking camera. I know I'm not really looking at the camera then, but I have to look at the screen so I can look at the chat whilst it's going on. But at least my eyes are always in either looking at this screen or looking at this screen when my video is, right? So I'm very confused, but she was just kind of looking at the floor half the time. I don't know how. of all the people, clearly people want to watch her content because she's got all those followers on TikTok, and that's why she's managed to be able to use that platform to pitch herself to, you know, the shadowy figures behind Reasoned UK, whatever, or media and activism, as they're actually registered as on the government database of companies. But this is the Darren Grimes effect. Hopefully we should, or the Grime effect, the Crafty Wank effect, something like that. We can try and coin this about the ways in which people can use certain talking points to be able to generate their own little media career by being a right-wing pundit, by appealing to the narratives that want to be pushed by the people who have the money to be able to fund it. Which again is all part of, you know, Chomsky's propaganda model, but you know, it's worth analysing that and the way in which people like Darren, people like Jess, people like Sophie Corcoran help feed into that narrative, and why they will continue to use that to try and launder the narrative over and over and over again. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this segment. Future YouTube viewers, if you want to support my channel, please drop the like button, click subscribe, leave a comment below. That's my socials over there. You can go follow me on each of those platforms if you want to. If you click the bell, that will tell you when I go live on YouTube. It'll also tell you when I upload. And you can also go into the little box down below and have my Twitch channel. You can go follow there as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you see you in the next one, and take care.